Today we will explore the concept of emotional control with a Stoic lens. We will delve deep into all the corners of the philosophy to understand what it truly means to control your emotions. The truth is, many channels on this platform promote misleading ideas, saying Stoicism is about being cold, desensitized, and uncaring. That could not be further from the truth. These channels are imposters. They are spreading false, misleading, and possibly even harmful ideas. Stoicism is not about being emotionless. The Stoics acknowledged feeling emotions as deeply human. So what does it mean then to feel nothing in the Stoic lens? We will discuss this today. These lessons will help us in the moments when we become emotionally charged or triggered, the moments when we become depressed or feel a sense of helplessness, and the moments when we feel angry, whether it be minor frustrations, arguments, or betrayal. To feel nothing in Stoicism does not mean to stop feeling. It means to stop being controlled by feeling. It means to separate what we experience emotionally from how we respond. It means mastering the gap between impulse and reaction, between judgment and action. This is the discipline the Stoics pursued, and this is what we will study now. Chapter 1. Understanding the Stoic view of emotion. The Stoics did not deny emotion. They recognized its presence in human life. What they did was classify emotions into two types: those that arise from false beliefs and those that arise from correct understanding. Emotions like rage, jealousy, despair, and fear are rooted in assumptions. These assumptions often misjudge reality. We believe something is terrible, so we panic. We believe someone has wronged us, so we lash out. We believe we are lost, so we collapse. These emotions are not just reactions. They are the results of judgments. The Stoics taught that if we correct the judgment, we can change the emotion. Epictetus reminded his students that people are not disturbed by events, but by their opinions about those events. This principle forms the foundation of Stoic emotional discipline. We must also examine short temperaments and the daily frustrations that boil over from seemingly trivial incidents: spilled drinks or food, dropping and breaking items, cracking your phone screen, slow internet, or minor interruptions. These small events often trigger outsized reactions. They catch us off guard because they interrupt our sense of control. Each of these moments becomes a training ground. They are frequent, and their very ordinariness makes them ideal for discipline. Every day we are given many chances to observe our reactions, steady ourselves, and choose not to be disturbed by what is minor. We must also examine the role of gossip and how it shapes our emotional state. Gossip can be seductive. When we engage in it, we often feel a sense of connection, trust, or agreement with others. But gossip trains the mind to dwell in judgment, to seek fault, and to lower the standard of thought. It shifts our attention toward criticism and away from self-discipline. It becomes a way to soothe discomfort by finding something or someone to blame. This is why the Stoic avoids gossip or treats it as a test. When faced with it, they stay neutral. They observe without engaging. They use the moment to strengthen their composure and to resist the subtle erosion of virtue that gossip encourages. To feel nothing is not to feel empty. It is to feel clearly. It is to see that the cause of emotional turmoil is often a flawed belief. It is the belief that we must be treated fairly, the belief that things must go our way, the belief that life must feel good. Once we challenge those beliefs, we weaken the emotions that rise from them. This is the first step. Identify the source of the feeling. Trace it to the belief. Ask if the belief is valid. Ask if the judgment serves your reason. We will now go deeper into how this plays out in our daily struggles. Chapter 2. The emotional trigger is a signal, not a command. Strong emotion often hits suddenly. Someone speaks to you with disrespect. A plan falls apart. A person you trust lies. These moments generate an impulse. The impulse rises quickly and pulls at you. But that impulse is not a command. The Stoics saw the emotional trigger as a signal. It alerts you. It says, "Pay attention. Something important is happening." That alert is useful. But what follows the alert must be shaped by reason, not reaction. If someone insults you, the insult itself is just an arrangement of words or a tone of voice. What causes the sting is the interpretation you place on those words. You judge that the insult is an attack on your identity. You believe it reflects your value as a person. That belief is what causes emotional pain. If you take a moment to question that belief, it often reveals itself as weak, unfounded, or exaggerated. The insult only affects you deeply if you believe it holds weight. You are not obligated to accept every impression as true. The Stoics trained their minds to step back from impressions. They separated what was said from what they believed about what was said. In this distance, there is freedom. There is the possibility of choosing how to respond. This space between trigger and action is where character is developed. It is where the mind practices strength. You begin by noticing the first signs of an emotional impulse. It might be tension in your jaw, a quickening of your breath, a surge of irritation. These are early signals. You become familiar with them. You learn to pause when they arise. You teach your body to remain still. You build a habit of delaying response. Even a brief delay creates room for clarity. That space is enough to change the course of your behavior. In that space, the thinking mind can return. The emotional surge does not carry you away. You see the situation for what it is, one moment among many, one impression among countless others. You regain control of your posture, your words, and your focus. You do not respond automatically. You respond through choice. You shape your conduct with reason. You maintain the standard of your values rather than reflect someone else's behavior. That is the core of self-mastery. Each time you practice restraint, your internal discipline grows stronger. It becomes easier to remain steady. You build consistency in your reactions. Your mood becomes less volatile. Your focus becomes harder to shake. The emotional landscape quiets. You start to see more clearly how many disturbances were not necessary. You stop chasing every impulse. You begin to hold your position calmly and with intent. To feel nothing in this context means to refuse the invitation of needless reactions. You experience the emotional pull. You witness it arise, but you do not follow it. You do not make a story out of it. You do not escalate it. You reduce it to what it is, a passing signal. You let the moment pass as it came. You feel the motion, but you do not move with it. You can train this capacity. You can strengthen it through repetition. You can learn to feel the full weight of discomfort while standing still. You can allow insult, disappointment, or irritation to reach you without disturbing your center. You can observe without absorbing. You can hear harsh words without echoing them. You can face provocation without submitting to reaction. The Stoics viewed this as a form of power. A steady person is a useful person. They are able to respond rather than react. They maintain focus when others are scattered. They hold composure in moments of tension. They act with reason when others act with impulse. They are not empty of feeling. They are full of clarity. Each time you resist the urge to react, the space between stimulus and response becomes more familiar. You begin to live within that space. It becomes your ground. You make fewer decisions from emotion. You make more decisions from principle. You develop precision. You speak less from frustration and more from understanding. You direct your energy where it counts. You save your strength for what matters. This is the practice of Stoic emotional discipline. You reduce noise. You increase stability. You bring intention into each choice. You observe the rise of emotion, and you let it pass without shaping your actions. That is the meaning of feeling nothing. It is not the removal of experience, it is the removal of distortion. It is the mind governing itself. Chapter 3. Separating pain from suffering. Pain is real. The Stoics never denied that. They experienced loss, betrayal, disease, war, and poverty. What they trained to avoid was suffering. Suffering is the added weight. It is what we pile on top of pain through our thoughts. If someone you love dies, you will feel sadness. The Stoic does not resist that. What they resist is despair. Despair says, "This should not have happened. I cannot go on." Despair is the result of judgment. The Stoics separated the facts from the feelings. They asked direct questions to bring clarity to the situation. What has happened helps frame the event without adding assumptions. What is in my control reminds you of your responsibilities and limitations. What must I do now shifts your focus to action. These questions are practical. They remove distractions. They bring the mind back to the present. This process reduces confusion and emotional exaggeration. It creates mental order. This line of questioning is not about avoidance. It is about direction. It does not deny pain. It organizes your response to pain. It gives your mind a clear task. It helps you return to your role without spiraling into fear, guilt, or resentment. When the event is identified clearly and your next step is outlined, emotional weight begins to lift. You stop spinning. You begin to move forward with purpose. Feeling nothing means you do not add unnecessary burden to what already hurts. Pain exists. It is part of life. But suffering often comes from the meaning we assign to pain. You lose a job. That event carries real consequences. But if you begin to say to yourself that you are worthless, that your future is ruined, that no one will respect you again, you increase the burden. The pain becomes heavy because of the story you attach to it. That is the difference between pain and suffering. The Stoic approach is not emotional detachment from reality. It is detachment from illusion and misjudgment. Pain exists in the body or in external loss. Suffering exists in the mind's commentary. You see the pain, but you do not let it expand into every corner of your life. You do not give it permission to define you. You recognize the difference between what happened and what you assume it means. This habit of separating what is real from what is imagined creates stability. You gain a sense of control through precision. You feel the pain as it is, no more and no less. You do not resist it with denial. You do not amplify it with imagination. You acknowledge it directly. You allow it to pass through without shaping your identity. This creates a strength that bends with pressure instead of breaking. The mind becomes more durable through exposure to difficulty and the practice of clarity. You begin to understand that pain, when isolated from exaggeration, is rarely overwhelming. It can be felt directly without losing composure. You are not thrown off course by discomfort. You become trained to remain present and to function well, even under pressure. You learn to hold steady in the middle of uncertain or difficult moments. This steadiness is not forced. It is formed over time through awareness and restraint. The chaos around you no longer defines your inner state. You carry yourself with a calm that comes from understanding the difference between what is real and what is imagined. You become aware of how quickly pain escalates when thoughts are left unchecked. Through repeated practice, you prevent this escalation. You return to what is true and act only on what is necessary. Each time you face pain without adding mental weight, you reinforce this discipline. Each repetition makes it easier to navigate the next difficulty with balance. You reduce the frequency of emotional spirals. You improve your ability to direct attention. You begin to function more clearly in situations where others might shut down or become reactive. Your focus sharpens. Your words slow down. Your actions become intentional. You do not expect life to be free from challenge. You expect yourself to be able to stand inside those challenges without collapsing inward. When the emotion rises, you observe it. When the pressure increases, you hold your posture. You do not harden yourself. You remain open but steady. You respond with precision. You take care of what must be done and let go of what serves no purpose. This practice leads to a form of peace that is active, not passive. It is not a withdrawal, it is an expression of control. You carry less unnecessary burden. You become harder to shake. This clarity does not isolate you, it connects you more deeply to your role. You do not feel less because you are numb. You feel less because you have refined your response to only what is essential. This is what the Stoics meant by training the mind. They sought strength that could endure real suffering without being overwhelmed by imagined stories. They pursued action based on reality, not emotion fed by judgment. To feel nothing is to remain with what is accurate, to respond to what exists, and to resist what distorts. This is where steadiness is built. This is how the Stoic meets difficulty, with clarity, with calm, and with control. Chapter 4. The role of reason in emotional mastery. Reason is the Stoic's primary tool. It serves as the foundation of emotional stability and clear decision-making. The Stoics believed that human beings are defined by their rational capacity. This is what gives them the ability to assess situations, reflect on outcomes, and respond with measured intention. While animals are driven by instinct and immediate impulse, humans are equipped with reason, which allows for judgment, restraint, and foresight. The Stoics viewed this capacity as essential for living well. When a feeling rises, reason steps in to guide the response. It asks clear, purposeful questions. Is this true? Is this based on reality or on assumption? Is this necessary? Does this thought lead to action that aligns with my role? Is this helpful? Will acting on this emotion support my values, or does it lead away from them? These questions shift the mind from reaction to examination. They make space for clarity. They slow the rush of automatic thinking. Reason creates structure in the mind. It allows you to separate the feeling from the evaluation. When fear appears, reason does not try to erase it. It examines it. Is there actual danger? Or is this a habit of predicting harm? When shame arises, reason asks if there was a true failure of principle, or if the discomfort is based on comparison or the need for approval. These distinctions matter. They prevent unnecessary distress and redirect the mind toward action that serves your deeper goals. The consistent use of reason in emotional moments becomes a discipline. It is not a rejection of emotion. It is a method of testing it. You allow the emotion to present itself. You do not rush to suppress it or obey it. You measure it. You study it. You use it to understand the gap between your instinct and your philosophy. This practice becomes a form of self-respect. It affirms that your thoughts and actions are worth guiding. It builds confidence in your own judgment. Over time, this habit reshapes your inner life. You start to feel less dominated by temporary moods. You stop chasing every emotional wave. The intensity of impulse begins to soften. The moments between emotion and response grow wider. You begin to act with greater consistency. Your behavior starts to align more closely with your values, even in moments of tension. You respond from a place of control instead of urgency. This is how the Stoic begins to feel nothing in the proper sense. The process does not remove emotional experience. It filters it. The emotion still rises, but it is examined before it shapes behavior. The raw sensation passes through reason. The response that emerges is chosen. It reflects understanding. It reflects alignment with values. You stop being pulled into a cycle of reaction. You begin to direct what comes next with intent. As this becomes more familiar, the mind gains stability. You rely less on the immediate mood and more on structure. You stop depending on favorable conditions to stay calm. You stop waiting for others to behave a certain way before you decide how to feel. You narrow your attention to what is present. You look at what must be done. You give less time to emotional narratives that lead nowhere. You reduce the drama inside your thoughts by reducing how much attention you give to unnecessary concerns. You begin to understand what belongs to you and what does not. Your choices are based on principle, not on how you feel in the moment. You judge whether an action is right, not whether it is easy. You begin to sort through your emotions with care. What supports discipline is kept. What distorts your judgment is discarded. The process becomes efficient. You feel more grounded, even in situations where confusion once ruled your decisions. The practice of reasoned emotion becomes your method of clarity. You take each situation and examine it. You ask if the reaction serves your role. You ask if it contributes to the outcome you seek. You ask if it helps you live closer to your values. If it does, you act. If it does not, you stop. This form of sorting turns the mind into a stable guide. It removes what is harmful. It keeps what is necessary. You become more capable of navigating your day without emotional interference. You make fewer assumptions. You act with greater care. You move through challenge with less hesitation. You begin to live from a position of order. The mind becomes simpler. The inner noise reduces. Your decisions become more direct. Your sense of peace becomes more consistent. This is how clarity takes root. You train your attention. You refine your judgments. You act with control. You feel what comes, but you do not hand over the direction of your life to it. You lead yourself. You make choices that reflect your reason, not your mood. This is where you live with discipline. This is where strength becomes quiet. This is where feeling nothing becomes a form of power, built on attention, shaped by logic, and sustained by deliberate practice. Chapter 5. Indifference to what does not belong to you. The Stoics practiced indifference to what they could not control. This was not an attitude of avoidance or detachment from life, but a discipline of focus. They referred to this practice as apatheia, a condition of being free from passions that arise from false judgments and misplaced value. Emotional peace, in the Stoic framework, is achieved not through withdrawal, but through recognition of what belongs to your control and what does not. There are many things you interact with every day that are outside your influence. You cannot control changes in the weather. You cannot alter the direction of the economy. You cannot determine what other people think, say, or do. These are events and forces that unfold independently of your will. Feeling distressed by them does not change them. Placing your emotional stability in these areas only creates instability. The Stoic trains the mind to disengage from the expectation that the external world should operate according to personal preference. When it rains, they do not complain, they prepare. When someone spreads gossip, they do not panic, they stay true to their conduct. When a plan falls through, they do not freeze, they revise the plan and move forward. In each situation, they return to the same question: what is within my control right now? This kind of thinking builds real strength. It creates a sense of order within that is not easily disturbed. You begin to conserve your emotional energy. You spend less time reacting to every change in your environment. You become more present. You focus on what can actually be influenced. Your internal state stops being dictated by external variables. This is what it means to feel nothing in the Stoic sense when facing the uncontrollable. You are not careless. You are aware. You see where your effort belongs and where it does not. You remove the need to carry burdens that are not yours. You no longer absorb stress from things you were never meant to manage. You continue to show up, do your work, keep your word, and act with integrity. But you do it with an understanding that the outcome is not fully yours. You focus on the input. your decisions, your attitude, your discipline. You leave the rest alone. This is not laziness, it is precision. You do not confuse involvement with control. You do not confuse preference with outcome. This approach builds resilience through repetition and self-observation. Each time you choose to act with purpose rather than react with emotion, you strengthen your internal structure. You begin to recognize the difference between what simply happens and how you interpret it. When others are disturbed by things beyond their reach, you remain engaged in what is yours to manage. You keep your focus on your task. You continue forward without allowing frustration or discouragement to interrupt your rhythm. When people around you respond with agitation to delay, failure, or inconvenience, you adapt. You change your method if needed, but not your mindset. You stay grounded in your role. You carry out your part without being defined by the results. Your attention stays on what can be done right now. This makes your actions more efficient and your emotions less volatile. You stop leaking energy into events that do not benefit from your concern. Your reactions are no longer determined by what others expect or what circumstances demand. They are guided by what you've chosen to value. They are shaped by principles you have examined. You decide based on what supports your structure. This kind of posture is not dramatic. It is consistent. It is built through a quiet refusal to be moved by every wave. You train your attention to return to what belongs to you. You recognize where your choices begin and where they end. You do not reach beyond that boundary. You become less interested in blame and more invested in conduct. You give your energy to the part that is yours to play. This becomes a habit of focus. It simplifies your thinking. It lowers emotional friction. Letting go of what you cannot control creates mental space. That space becomes the ground where clear thought develops. You are no longer crowded by opinions, projections, or desires about what should happen. You are clear about what is happening. You act with precision in that space. You remain steady because you are not overloaded. You stay ready because you are not scattered. To feel nothing in this context is to remain present through disorder. You accept that the world will not match your preferences. You do your duty in spite of this. You continue to work, serve, speak, and act without leaning on outcome for your peace. You feel the pressure, but you do not shift with it. You see the change, but you do not lose your place in it. This is how the Stoic builds peace, not through isolation, but through disciplined attention, not through denial, but through accurate judgment. You stop wasting energy on things that are not yours. You stop creating inner conflict around outer conditions. You anchor yourself in clarity. You shape your behavior through reason. This becomes the foundation for balance in a disordered world. This is how you practice feeling nothing. You strip away what does not matter. You place your thoughts and actions in alignment with what does. You endure what you must, improve what you can, and release what you were never meant to carry. Chapter 6. Holding the line in daily pressure. Daily life presents frequent and ordinary tests. The challenge is often not large or dramatic. It is subtle. A delayed message, a cracked phone screen, a slow internet connection that interrupts your work, traffic that makes you late, a loud neighbor at night, a delivery that arrives late or to the wrong address, a mistake in a simple task. These are not catastrophic events, but they come with a cost. They begin to wear down your patience. They test your attention, your tone, your ability to remain composed. Each one adds a small weight. They do not overwhelm by themselves. They overwhelm through repetition and accumulation. The Stoic prepares for these small disruptions. They understand that emotional discipline is not only meant for major loss or public conflict, it is a daily practice. It is tested early when you wake up tired and something spills. It is tested mid-morning when you misplace your keys or when your device lags during an important task. The Stoic sees each of these as a moment of choice. The irritation is real, it arises quickly, but it does not have to lead anywhere. You notice it, you name it. Then you choose your posture. Each ordinary inconvenience becomes an invitation to return to form. You measure your tone, you steady your hands, you adjust your pace. You continue doing what must be done. You do not allow a small disruption to define the next hour. You do not give a minor delay the power to reset your entire day. You hold your line. You train your attention to return to the task. You breathe. You continue. Strength is built here, in the repetition of staying present and composed when the pressure is mild but constant. There is no need to wait for a major crisis to apply Stoicism. The core of the discipline is lived in the smaller, quieter moments. These are the moments that seem insignificant on the surface. Being interrupted during work, misplacing something, hearing a noise while trying to rest. They do not seem like tests, but they are. The Stoic recognizes that these are opportunities. The same principle that applies in extreme difficulty also applies here. You stay grounded in what you control. You do not delay the practice of presence for more dramatic events. You begin now with what is in front of you. The day rarely unfolds exactly as planned. Expectations create pressure. The more you expect conditions to align perfectly, the more likely you are to feel tension when they do not. The Stoic removes this demand. They let go of the idea that things must go smoothly. They meet each disruption without resistance. They ask what the moment requires. They shift their energy toward what can be done instead of wishing things were different. This brings a sense of freedom. The weight of needing everything to be ideal no longer slows you down. Each disruption becomes neutral information. A cancelled meeting, a broken item, a delay. These are details to work around, not barriers to peace. You respond to the event without attaching emotion to it. You adjust your plan and continue. This reduces the emotional drag of everyday life. You stop giving unnecessary power to inconvenience. You start treating it as part of the path. This posture allows you to move with greater efficiency. Complaints do not move things forward. They consume time. They drain focus. The Stoic trains to return to action without needing the emotional reaction first. They recognize when the complaint is only a habit. Instead of fueling it, they shift their posture and continue. Each time they do this, they gain more familiarity with steadiness. Each time they choose clarity, the noise fades. The day will continue to test your patience. You do not expect relief from challenge. You use it to grow your ability to remain stable. The interruptions become practice. The delays become preparation. You learn to operate at your best without perfect conditions. You see yourself becoming more balanced. You waste less energy. You complete more of what you set out to do. Peace is not held for rare moments of silence. It is carried through the activity. It is found in your response to the unexpected. Control is not built in isolation. It is trained in motion. When your thoughts remain ordered in the middle of disorder, you become less shaken by change. The external world may shift, but your internal world holds its form. Frustration weakens. Delay loses its sting. Inconvenience becomes manageable. These are the signs of progress. You are no longer pulled by every small disruption. You begin to hold your center more easily. This is the test that matters. These are the moments that shape character. Control becomes real when applied to the unnoticed hours. When you choose patience in traffic. When you speak calmly after a mistake. When you stay on task through noise. These are the quiet victories. They are consistent. They build discipline without attention or praise. They shape the kind of strength that holds its form under pressure. This is the daily work of the Stoic. This is the real habit of holding your line. Chapter 7. The Discipline of Silence and Restraint. Stoic control is not always shown in action. Sometimes it is shown in restraint. It is shown in what you do not say, in the argument you walk away from, in the opinion you choose not to give. There is discipline in withholding energy. There is strength in letting the moment pass. Silence is a tool. It protects your attention. It gives your thoughts time to settle. It prevents unnecessary conflict. When used with intention, silence becomes a practice of clarity. You do not add noise. You reduce it. You conserve your inner resources for what matters. Restraint is another layer of discipline. It is practiced in moments where reaction feels immediate. When someone speaks to you with aggression, there may be a strong urge to correct them, to defend yourself, or to return the same tone. When someone misunderstands you, the instinct might be to over-explain or insist on clarity. When you are insulted or dismissed, you might feel the impulse to respond and restore your image. In these moments, the Stoic remains still. They understand that most situations do not require immediate correction. They allow the other person to carry their judgment. They remain focused on their own actions. You do not need to explain yourself to everyone. You do not need to fix every misperception. You do not need to meet every challenge with a counterattack. When you act from restraint, you are choosing to stay aligned with your principles rather than being dragged into proving something. The judgment of others does not require a response unless it interferes with your responsibilities. You stay with what matters, your role, your task, your direction. The Stoic does not respond to every opinion, insult, or provocation. They pause. They evaluate the purpose of their response. They consider whether speaking will serve a higher goal or only satisfy pride. They ask if engagement will bring clarity or cause further disturbance. This process does not delay action. It improves the quality of action. It helps you act with control rather than compulsion. When there is no need to respond, the Stoic does not respond. This space between impulse and action creates strength. Each time you choose silence instead of noise, you preserve clarity. Each time you choose not to defend yourself unnecessarily, you conserve energy. You stay focused on what you can influence. You hold your presence. You give yourself fewer moments to regret. You avoid escalating tension. You move through conflict without becoming part of it. You speak only when your words contribute to the outcome you intend. Over time, restraint becomes easier. The urge to respond immediately begins to fade. The habit of needing to be understood by everyone loses its importance. You no longer carry the expectation that others must see things your way. You stop needing validation to stay composed. You stop seeking reassurance before you feel secure. Instead, you return to your own standards. You rely on your own judgment. You measure your actions by your principles, not by others' opinions. You understand what you stand for. You maintain alignment with those values. You stay quiet when speech would lead nowhere. You remain calm when others try to provoke. You let your behavior show what you believe. You let your actions carry the weight of your words. This posture is efficient. It avoids unnecessary friction. It keeps you from wasting attention on reactions that do not support your aim. This calm presence becomes more natural. It creates space between stimulus and response. It gives you time to see more clearly and to respond with thought instead of reflex. This makes your discipline more precise. You are less distracted by conflict. You stay focused on what you must do. You stop being moved by other people's moods or words. You stay anchored in your own role. Some of the most meaningful acts of self-control are invisible. You let a false claim remain unchallenged because addressing it brings no benefit. You allow someone else to claim victory in an argument that adds no value. You leave a conversation with your posture intact without feeling the need to explain. These moments do not stand out. They are quiet, but they are the real test. They are where composure is proven. You do not act from the need to be right. You act from the understanding that some things are not worth the cost. You observe the moment. You decide what deserves a response. You keep your strength for things that require it. You do not burn your energy on distractions. This is not weakness. It is a form of maturity. It shows that you can bear discomfort without turning it into chaos. This chapter teaches that restraint is a sign of authority over your own mind. When you hold back, it is not hesitation, it is direction. You speak when the moment needs it. You act when it serves the purpose. You remain centered even when provoked. These moments define the Stoic. They are small, but they shape character. They form the base of long-term stability. They are the foundation of clarity that does not collapse under stress. Chapter 8. Redirecting emotion into purposeful action. Emotions generate energy. That energy does not need to be suppressed. It can be redirected. Anger can become focus. Fear can become preparation. Sadness can become depth. Frustration can become clarity. The Stoic does not waste the emotional energy. They put it to work. When the mind feels disrupted, it signals that attention is needed. The feeling may show up as tension, restlessness, or irritation. These are cues. They indicate that something in your experience requires awareness. The Stoic does not ignore these signals. They do not suppress them. They use them. They observe the internal shift and use it as a prompt to return to clarity. They ask direct questions. What task is available right now? What responsibility remains unchanged? What immediate action restores direction? These questions move attention away from the emotional pull and place it into motion. The emotional story is tempting. It creates a loop of thought centered on what went wrong or what might go wrong next. It pulls the mind into reflection without resolution. The Stoic breaks this loop by converting the feeling into movement. They stop asking, "Why did this happen?" and begin asking, "What can I do now?" This moves energy from reaction to resolution. It prevents emotional buildup. It allows the body and mind to align with what is practical. Redirected emotion becomes usable fuel. The mind becomes a channel, not a container. Disappointment becomes a reason to improve the process. A missed opportunity becomes a signal to refine your approach. Embarrassment becomes a reason to prepare more thoroughly. Worry becomes attention to detail. Sadness becomes time to think with depth and care. Emotion is accepted. It is acknowledged. It is then given a task. That task transforms its purpose. You do not resist emotion. You give it direction. This process requires discipline. You must slow down the reaction long enough to observe it. You must know your principles well enough to use them as your reference point. You must be clear on your responsibilities so that action becomes an available option. You are not acting from emotion. You are acting from structure, while emotion flows through that structure. This practice builds resilience. You learn to operate under pressure. You perform tasks even when the mood is low. You continue your duties even when energy dips. You do not rely on motivation. You rely on intention. The Stoic trains for this. They work while uncomfortable. They move while unsettled. They focus not on how they feel, but on what the moment demands. The redirection of emotion becomes a habit. Each time you do it, the process becomes faster. You shorten the gap between emotional shift and useful motion. You begin to see emotion as part of your system, not as a barrier to action. You use it to build momentum. You use it to sharpen focus. You remain available to serve your role. This chapter reminds us that emotion is not the source of disorder. Mismanagement is. When emotion is left without direction, it spreads. When it is shaped by action, it becomes energy in motion. The Stoic understands this. They do not avoid feeling. They develop skill in handling it. They train the body and mind to act while feeling. They carry out the task without waiting to feel better. This is how you master the moment. You keep moving with purpose. You let the action lead. You make progress through discipline. You reduce waste. You increase strength. You turn emotion into effort. Chapter 9. Practicing inner stillness in a loud world. The world is filled with noise. Messages, updates, opinions, and arguments arrive without end. This noise reaches into your thoughts. It pulls your attention in many directions. The Stoic trains to return to stillness. They choose what to respond to. They ignore what does not belong to their role. Inner stillness is not a withdrawal from life. It is a form of order. It is a mental state where your thoughts are not scattered. You remain aware of the noise, but you do not absorb it. You remain aware of the chaos, but you do not carry it. You maintain control over what enters your mind and how long it stays. Stillness is practiced in how you begin your day. The first actions you take either reinforce calm or invite distraction. The Stoic begins with intention. They choose what to let in. They choose what to avoid. They protect the first moments of the day from noise. This includes the words they read, the sounds they hear, the conversations they engage in. Each choice shapes the quality of thought that follows. A quiet morning builds a steady mind. An unfocused start brings disorder. Stillness is reinforced through small acts of separation from constant input. Taking a walk without checking messages. Sitting in silence before starting tasks. Preparing the day's outline without external influence. These are not breaks. They are active forms of alignment. They create room for thought. They help the mind reset its pace. Even brief pauses, when used with awareness, give structure to the day. Stillness is also developed through listening. In conversation, you listen without rushing to reply. You allow space between questions and answers. You hold your own posture while others speak. This builds patience. It trains your attention to stay in place. It reduces the need to speak out of habit or impulse. Over time, these habits quiet the internal voice that reacts to everything. They make the mind more stable. The Stoic filters information before accepting it. They do not chase headlines. They do not follow every voice. They are selective with input. They reflect before reacting. They ask if what they consume adds clarity or causes noise. This helps them maintain focus. It prevents distraction from becoming a default state. It preserves mental energy. Stillness is not a state of inactivity. It is a condition of control. The mind remains active but directed. It becomes more responsive and less reactive. The Stoic uses this state to guide decisions, manage energy, and avoid being pulled into unnecessary motion. Stillness sharpens judgment. It strengthens discipline. It gives space for principles to guide thought. Over time, this practice creates a strong foundation. The external world remains full of noise. Demands, messages, and disruptions will continue, but your response becomes less scattered. You do not absorb every input. You do not mirror every mood. You keep your focus. You protect your clarity. The world may move quickly, but your decisions remain deliberate. This chapter reminds us that stillness is not passive. It is earned. It is maintained through action. It requires boundaries, choices, and repetition. Once developed, it supports all other disciplines. It improves how you think, how you speak, and how you act. It becomes the ground beneath a clear and stable life. Chapter 10. Anchoring yourself through principles. The final layer of Stoic emotional control is to ground yourself in principles. These principles do not shift with changing circumstances. They remain in place when comfort is removed. They remain reliable when people around you are inconsistent. They are tested during setbacks, criticism, and conflict. It is easy to speak them when life is quiet. They become essential when life is not. The Stoic holds principles as steady guides. They are used to assess how to respond when emotions rise. They help make decisions when emotions offer no clear direction. The principle remains when the mood is unstable. It becomes the fixed point that steadies the mind. When conditions shift, when pressure builds, or when clarity fades, the principle remains unchanged. You begin by identifying the values that matter most to your life and your role. These are not opinions. These are rules for conduct. They may include honesty, patience, courage, discipline, humility, or justice. These are the standards that shape what you do. They are not optional. They are obligations you choose for yourself. When you feel scattered or uncertain, you come back to them. They become your default setting in times of uncertainty. When you feel reactive, you remind yourself of what you are committed to. When you are criticized, you return to patience. When you are afraid, you return to courage. When tempted to avoid effort, you return to discipline. The principle is not emotional. It is structural. It gives you the direction that feeling cannot always provide. You do not wait to feel prepared. You act in alignment with what your principles demand. You do not look for external confirmation before choosing what is right. You follow what you wrote for yourself. This removes hesitation. This reduces second-guessing. You are not led by conditions. You are led by your standard. This is how consistency is developed. Writing down your principles helps reinforce them. Reviewing them daily keeps them active in your thinking. Measuring your actions against them builds accountability. This is not a pursuit of flawlessness. It is a system for staying grounded. It brings order to the mind. It reminds you of what remains yours when other things feel out of reach. This daily reflection reduces confusion. You do not ask what others think. You ask whether your action matched your principle. This brings self-respect. It allows you to carry out your role without needing external validation. You operate from what is fixed. You stay upright under pressure. This chapter brings the discipline together. The impulse is noticed. The judgment is checked. The emotion is channeled. The situation is accepted. Through every step, you stay anchored. That anchor is your principle. It does not shift. It does not speak in anger or fear. It speaks in clarity. It holds you steady when the world becomes unstable. This is the final layer of control. It is the ability to act clearly under emotion, not because the emotion is gone, but because your system is stronger than the emotion. This is what it means to feel nothing in the Stoic sense. Emotion is seen. It is understood. It is managed. Action follows structure, not impulse. The result is not emptiness. The result is alignment. It is a life lived with clear intent.